Welcome to Dental All-Stars. I'm Eric Vickery, lead mastery coach at All-Star Dental Academy and president of Vickery Coaching. Guys, I'm very excited to interview our guest today. David Ehrlich is just a great guy. We've been talking here for a few minutes, and I'm excited to get into it, ask some questions on your behalf, really get to know him. He's a lawyer, and so I want to get to that side of things and help just really give you some insight on how to make sure you are protecting your practice and yourself. And so some background on David. He grew up in South Florida and earned a business marketing degree from the University of Central Florida. Then he graduated with honors from Nova Southeastern University Law School. He's practiced business litigation, insurance coverage litigation, real estate litigation, corporate transaction, and he's a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator. He's been a lawyer for 12 years, 7 of which was at Blank Rome, one of the largest law firms in the world. And he started his own practice in 2019 to handle his own client base and focus on areas of the law that he's passionate about. And he's a proud husband and a father of 2 elementary aged kids. So welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Eric. And thanks for referencing my kids at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's the part I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be involved with this.
Absolutely. And I see you got some artwork on your wall for those that are watching on YouTube. I'm assuming that's from the kids. That's not your own work.
I do, and I wouldn't trade them for a Van Gogh.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. I love it. It's so cool. So I know that you and I have just been talking, getting to know each other, and I've been wanting to discuss, I hear from doctors, they have this fear factor, right? They have this, I don't want to be sued thing going on in the back of their mind all the time. And I want to just get your insight to help dentists out with this and just give them some peace of mind, allow them just to feel good about what they're doing. And I guess it's peace of mind, right? I think that's really what we're after here. So I'd love to jump into this, ask you some questions, and see what we can provide as far as value for those listening. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Awesome.
And businesses encounter all different types of pitfalls and problems, and dentists specifically as business, and it depends if you're coming at this from as a practice owner or an independent contractor. But one of the issues that I see most common in my practice are breakdowns in employment and independent contractor agreements between the practice owners and any independent contractor physicians, or if they choose to hire hygienists or any other staff on a independent contract basis as opposed to a W-2 employee. And those contracts have all sorts of clauses that are fraught with issues. And one issue that is very common, and specifically for dentists that might deal with multiple dentist practices, are non-compete agreements. And that is when you agree to work for a dentist's office. It's natural from the employer side. If you have your own practice, it's natural for you to say, well, I don't want to hire a dentist that's going to help my practice get their own client patient base and then try to go off on their own and take my patient base, right? That's something that we see very common in numerous industries, especially service-based industries like dentistry.
Yeah.
And so when I counsel my clients when I'm counseling clients that have their own practice, and that is to design non-compete agreements that will prevent that as best as possible under the law, because Florida law does have a non-compete statute that designates certain timeframes and geographic radiuses are reasonable to include. And so I counsel clients to include the fullest extent of what is presumed reasonable under Florida law to protect them from having an independent contractor dentist specifically that can garner favor with their patient base and then start their own practice down the street and try to take it with them.
Yeah. That makes sense. What about, and that leads me into a W-2 employee, how does a dentist avoid, and I guess this is a state by state thing probably, but a wrongful dismissal of an employee, a W-2 employee?
That's a great question. So Florida specifically is an at-will state, which basically, and many states in the country are the majority are what's called at-will states, which mean you can basically hire or fire anyone. An employer can hire and fire any employee for any basis that's not protected. So basically anything that's not discriminatory. So you can, if you don't like someone's shirt, as long as that shirt doesn't have anything to do with race, gender, religion, or any of the various protected classes, you can let someone go. But it's also common to have employment contracts that spell out what you can and what you cannot terminate someone for, because that helps with clarify what rights and obligations the independent contractors have.
Okay.
Um,
I gotcha. Yeah.
Sure. And then the one other thing I did want to say about these employment agreements is that if you're coming at this from if you happen to be a dentist working for someone else's practice, there's other issues to look at when you're approached with those contracts. And that is the duration of it, and what the termination clause is, what they can and what they cannot terminate the contract for, and what type of severance you might be entitled to. So I help dentists and other physicians negotiate on the contractual side. I've done it on both sides, where I've helped employers, you know, incorporate the best possible language for employers, and then on the employee or the independent contractor side, to make sure that the termination agreement or the termination clauses give them enough flexibility that might help them and not restrict them in the future.
Got it. Got it. And we're in this COVID, I call it post-COVID, right? We're post-COVID. And so AC after
Let's hope
COVID,
so.
after COVID. Yeah, we're in this, we're back up and running, but now there's all of these, new protocols and things that we're implementing, and the PPE, all this terminology that the general public really wasn't aware of before. And so how do you see COVID playing a role in a dental practice where the dentist really needs to worry about protecting themselves, not only from COVID and that perception, but also from litigation, either from a patient or another employee?
Absolutely. COVID-19 has affected every aspect of American life, and that certainly includes dentistry. Now, the
Hmm.
good thing for dentists is that they have, uh, as part of their practices, PPE and other protective gear and masks and other common accoutrement to what it takes to be a dentist is already kind of baked into the pie to running a dental practice. It's almost a good thing that the rest of society has now been exposed to the necessity and the benefits of it. But dentists have been ahead of the curve in that regard, in
Yeah.
terms of wearing masks whenever you're looking into someone's mouth, and in that sense, dentistry has something of an advantage to some other industries that don't have those baked in safeguards. But on the other end of it, it dentistry is literally an up in your face business, right? And so physical distancing and social distancing that have been promulgated by society, it's very difficult to be a dentist when you can't get within 6 feet of somebody. So you're naturally going to have to break that proximity barrier and get up in your patient's face, and that will breed a little bit of either skepticism, or some patients might be uncomfortable with it, and I would counsel dentists to make patients feel very comfortable during that process. And then in terms of avoiding litigation, you know society is fraught with thirsty plaintiffs lawyers that like
Mm.
to um, bring claims for anything that they think might trigger some kind of early resolution, specifically from an insurance company, and in this case a malpractice carrier, or a general liability claim for the transmission of COVID-19. Now, the science that I've seen and that has been litigated is it's incredibly difficult to ascertain a specific transmission point, even in the situation where you have, okay, well, everyone knows that 70 people that went to a specific wedding, or they can sometimes narrow it down to a specific time frame or an event that they contracted it from. But really, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. So I don't see a flood of litigation coming about negligence that led to transmission necessarily, but that's certainly something that dentists should have on their radar. And I certainly counsel them to have, plexiglass dividers, and as much PPE and avoidance of physical distancing, other than the necessities of,
Yeah.
of especially
treatment.
hygiene and treatment.
Yeah.
Cleanings and any kind of treatment is going to be difficult
Yeah.
without breaking that physical distancing, and waivers also. So a dentist, as part of its sign up paperwork, can certainly have a patient acknowledge that they cannot guarantee that the spread of COVID-19. Now, is that something that would be proof positive in court if ever pushed? It's not possible, but an acknowledgement is something that you can at least demonstrate to a jury, or in general, that they've at least acknowledged that this was a danger that they assumed when undertaking treatment.
Okay. I'm assuming no. I don't know of any cases of transmission in North America of COVID within a dental office. Have you heard anything like that, or?
I haven't specifically, and
Yeah.
but keep in mind that anything that would be publicized, any case law or any decisions that are usually publicized, are either post verdict, or if someone forgets to include a confidentiality agreement in a release, and then a plaintiff's lawyer might post it on their website. Look how much I got from
Yeah.
so and so dentist down the street. So just because they're not publicized doesn't mean that they're not out there. And for every so many lawyers, there's going to at least be a few that try to pursue claims like that if they think there's a payday at the end of the day.
Yeah. It feels like it'd be really hard to prove that they got COVID in a dental office. Or
Absolutely, and I would look forward to defending something like that for
yeah.
sure.
Okay. I gotcha. All right. And then we also dealt with being shut down, and there was obviously triple P money was a great help to that. But then there was this business interruption talk. I never heard of business interruption. I mean, I have a business degree, and I was like, "There's business interruption insurance." I was like, "What is this?" And there's claims of this. And so, what can you shed some light on this and just tell us what we need to know, and maybe more for future reference?
Yes, business interruption has the potential to be one of the biggest rushes of litigation in all of the United States if a few cases are decided in favor of business owners. It could open the absolute floodgates. Now, what business interruption insurance is an insurance product that it's usually a rider or an endorsement on top of a comprehensive um, uh, general liability and general business policy that has the right to, if you are shut down for various reasons, that you can seek first party benefits from your insurance company for the lost revenue that you otherwise would have received. Now,
If
what
you
we
have
know,
that coverage, right? If
that's
you've got,
and you bring up a really important point, because it's not it's common amongst a lot of businesses. It's most associated with restaurants and the
yes,
hospitality industry,
yeah,
because that is something that they simply have no other means of revenue other than being physically open as a brick and mortar, right?
hmm,
A dentist, theoretically, heaven forbid you're shut down for a day or two, you can catch up on some other billable exercises, like actually creating the models, and
hmm,
working on veneers, and there's a lot of different things that a dentist can do on an off day to continue that work towards obtaining revenue that other businesses can't. So in that sense, it's an advantage. But again, if you're shut down for more than a few days,
yeah,
that could be a disaster. So but that insurance, the reason I'm hesitant to say that it is going to be a floodgates, and that we're not just on the precipice of the floodgates, is because the insurance industry is not going to just lay down and say, you know what, there's potential, $1 trillion
oh my
in
gosh,
money
yeah,
lost in the economy. Hey, come at me for the money, right? They're not,
yeah,
they're never going to do that. So they're pursuing all potential legal defenses, and that is that their primary argument, and it's being decided in all over America right now. We're going to know a lot more in the next 6 months. But what insurance companies are arguing is that in order to have a valid claim for business interruption, there must be what's called a direct physical loss. And that means that, did something touch something or someone that led to the shutdown? And now the natural argument is, well, and if you have your own dental practice, that, well, look, I had to shut down because the physicality of a virus on my equipment in my airspace that could lead to someone actually getting COVID. And now the insurance company's various counter arguments are, well, you cannot ascertain, you can't prove that molecule or that virus matter was physically on anything in your office. It's all theoretical. You shut
Yeah,
down because the government told you so,
that's
not
right.
because you can prove that it was on your implements or in your airspace. So those are the sort of the battleground. That's the playing field for that argument. Now, there have been at least one decision in Florida favorable to a business owner, but that was the denial of a motion to dismiss. Now, what that means is that the court said there's enough there to keep going, but not necessarily that
You're going to
we're
win.
agreeing with the plaintiff altogether. So
Yeah.
if courts ultimately decide in favor of business owners, that could be a humongous area of litigation that clogs the court system for years to come. But it could also give redress to many dentists and business owners that have been aggrieved by this whole process. So it's very exciting as a lawyer to see where that goes, because that's going to dictate where a lot of the specifically the insurance industry goes over the next few years.
So if I'm understanding correctly, two things. One, insurance is only good until you need it, and then it doesn't pay anything, right? And then two, to sum it up, what you're saying is if a business owner of any sort at some point wins one of these cases against their insurance company to pay out business interruption due to COVID shutdown, it will open the floodgates for other businesses to start following suit, in which case it would be catastrophic financially for insurance companies, it sounds like.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what we can distill that down in recommendations for the listeners
Yeah.
is contact your insurance broker and find out whether that is a coverage that you have. And it's possible that, if you don't know, then worst comes to worst, it's worth a phone call to find out. And it's possible, not everyone knows what coverages they have, because usually you get these comprehensive policies that can have additional endorsements and riders on them. And it's certainly worth a phone call to find out. And then if you do, I would speak to your broker about whatever your insurance carrier's preferred claim format is, and work with your broker to submit a claim for business interruption. And that would include whatever days you were closed as a result of any municipal shutdowns or any government guidelines. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I understand too. So you're saying I find out I have business interruption insurance. I was closed now, retro, March and April, maybe some end of March to middle of May. For that time frame, I can still call and see about filing a claim for that.
You can call and try to file a claim. I think the main modus operandi would be to consider going forward, because we're about to experience
Yeah.
additional municipal shutdowns. So I'd be more optimistic about a prospective claim and being prepared
Yeah.
for a prospective claim
Gotcha.
and going back 8-9 months, because at this point, if you're talking about March and April, it's possible that the insurance company, in addition to the other defenses that I brought up before, might also argue that they're now prejudiced by the inability to inspect your
Yeah.
practice,
It's too
because
late.
who knows whether COVID was there or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I
but
gotcha.
it's still worth pursuing. You're not out anything by working with your broker to at least submit a claim.
But I also want to clarify this. You're not saying that if the government says you have to be shut down, that is then an opportunity for you to file a business interruption claim. It doesn't work that way.
It is not as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think that can be the basis in that, and then you at least have a timeline that you can, it's evidence that you were shut down, and that it helps explain the necessity to shut
I
down.
gotcha. Okay. All right.
But that in and of itself is not going to,
Yeah.
that doesn't make a claim itself.
All right. So the COVID train, we'll move beyond the COVID thing, because there's some other areas I want to cover, and I want to think in terms of peace of mind. I have some, we use the DISC personality profile system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, David, but C's are real thinkers. They're left brain analytical. They're scientists, and so I get a lot of C personality clients. and they look at every little thing. They're very detail oriented, and they won't even maybe do a procedure because they're worried that if I start doing that type of procedure, I'm worried that I'm going to be, if I do something wrong, I'm just going to be sued, And so
Sure.
they almost, so instead of expanding their practice and growing and becoming this amazing clinician in these other areas, they'd rather play it safe and almost recoil, right? And so what are some of the ways that dentists can avoid litigation? What any common pitfalls, or how would you suggest to give that doctor that peace of mind to avoid that malpractice?
Sure. First, to your point about a dentist that might not want to pursue a specific procedure because they're concerned, if they have the skills, I'd always recommend that someone, incorporate something in their practice if they're skillful and believe in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great quote that I have on my son's wall. It's a quote by Babe Ruth that says, "Never let the fear of striking out stop you from playing the game." And I would put that in under that category.
Yeah.
Um, but to that personality's point about some ways that you can avoid litigation, that there have been a lot of studies on this, and in dental and medical malpractice claims often come down to a very specific thing, and that is the failure to have compassion and for the personal interaction between doctor and patient to have gone awry. And there you will find that there are studies conducted where someone did not pursue a medical malpractice claim or a dental malpractice claim, and overwhelmingly they say, well, that dentist, she was really nice to me and she apologized, or
Mm.
he was really he sent me a note afterwards apologizing, where the staff was very courteous. And so often litigation is fueled by emotions. And sure, if something catastrophic happens and someone is severely injured and they have to come out of pocket to fix some damage, sure, that's understandable. But most malpractice litigation is borderline. It could go either way. And
Mm.
so often the personal feeling that someone has when they leave your office, that is what they're gonna take with them when deciding whether to pursue something or not. Right?
Mm.
If you go to, it sounds reductive, but if you go to a restaurant and you aren't happy with the meal, if the manager comes over and they say, Eric, I'm so sorry for your experience, here's, next one's on the house, or here's we'll comp this today, and here's a free drink for you and your partner, or whatever it is. There's so often that little thing might make you go back to that restaurant someday, because you're not leaving with the bad experience of just having uh, a poor food or whatever the experience is, and then
Yeah.
leaving that as your final thought. So common courtesy goes a long way with medical malpractice, and that's that, and dental malpractice. That's been proven with a lot of different studies. I've gone to a bunch of symposiums on litigation avoidance, and there's even data to show that dentists that have increased communications systems and tickler systems to follow up with people and just
Yep.
stay front of mind in people's stay
Yep.
front of mind, can really go a long way with someone when whether deciding to pursue a complaint or heaven forbid a malpractice claim.
Yeah. I tell clients all the time about a story with a client where they did the exam on a 18 plus, maybe 19-year-old child, right, of a family, but college student. She, as the patient came in, they diagnosed a cavity. The patient left. They wrote in the chart, that was it. She said, I'll let my parents know. She didn't schedule anything. She said, I'll let my parents know. She's 18, over 18, so they didn't call the parents, right?
Right.
You see where this is going.
Sure.
And then she went off to college, drank more soda, and freshman 15 or whatever it is, I don't know, came back and had a toothache. And the parents called up, and we were like, yeah, we told her it was a cavity, 9 months ago. And they're like, why didn't you call us? And they got really upset. And there was no documentation of any follow through.
Right.
And it was a bit of a gray line because no one had been contacted as far as the parents go, but yet and she was under their insurance and that sort of thing. And so, we put systems in place for follow-up to make sure that doesn't get missed. You
Sure.
know, everybody leaves with that appointment being created. Doesn't mean scheduled, but that way the follow-up doesn't fall through the cracks, right?
Absolutely. And that's an unfortunate situation where I think if that patient was 14 instead of 18, it
Yeah.
might have gone a little differently because you would have spoken with mom or dad.
Yep.
But look, that's a great example of where a little bit of human touch goes and a little bit of bedside manner can go a long way.
Yeah. And having you mentioned the verbal skills. I'm on this Facebook group for dentists, and I'm shocked at some of the dentists' response. What the post was a picture of a broken iPhone. And what had happened was the patient had a real loose fitting jacket, sweatshirt, I don't know, cardigan type thing, and had the
Yeah.
phone in that pocket. And when they leaned the chair back, it snapped, crunched the phone. And so the dentist basically put this post up and said, "This isn't my responsibility, right?" And
Right.
I'm going, what's a $200 phone versus all the negative feedback
Sure.
and response you're going to get? And I was shocked at the comments. It was literally like a 50-50 split. There were dentists on there saying, "It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault." And I was going,
Right.
what are we doing right now? We're worried about a $200 phone?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say to that?
You know, I would say to that you catch more flies with honey than you do
Yeah,
with vinegar. And if there's ever a tough decision to be made between keeping a patient happy and
exactly.
protecting your rights as a business owner, I'm much more inclined to counsel my clients to take the path of least resistance. And that $200 investment, they'll never forget that. You'll
Yeah.
be the dentist that got them a new phone
Oh my
when
gosh.
it might not have
Yeah.
even been your fault. And it doesn't necessarily need to even be a new phone. There's other ways to handle it,
Yeah.
right? Either a credit that they would have to use, give them a free teeth whitening, just some other offset
Yeah.
that can leave them feeling positively about you rather than, you know, if someone steps on your shoe, do you have to pick a fight about it, right? Like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
certain ways to just turn the other cheek and say, you know what, it's the cost of doing business. And sometimes think about how much money dentists spend on marketing. Here you have a situation where someone is physically already in your office. Imagine how much you spend per potential
Getting that
patient,
patient in the
and you
door. Yeah.
exactly, and this person's already in your door. So I would always counsel people to take care of their patients, and the rest will work itself out.
And that's just some reputation management, and you create a raving fan by doing the right thing. How would you
That's
like
right.
to be treated in that situation? And they look at you as the dentist as, driving the nice car, you're rich, and my phone was broken during your, and it's like, oh my gosh, just bless them, and it'll go so much further. So
Absolutely.
I hope there's dentists out there listening who hear something and go, you know what? We always want to benefit the patient in this. We always want to bless the patient in this and not be
Absolutely.
be perceived as being cheap or negligent or what have you. So, what other common pitfalls that they deal with patients and things like that? Anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about vendor agreements. Now, I know that
Mhm.
dentists are so often can they're approached by various uh, service providers and goods providers that they're looking to partner up with dentists, be it either for marketing purposes or product lines or other vendor agreements where they enter into an agreement for X amount of time and that they'll get a certain amount of referrals or those types of entities. And the one thing I'd counsel them on is just check the termination provision in all of your vendor agreements, because the last thing you want it, because a lot of vendor agreements, they read like a lease. And if you
Yeah.
if you ever read a good real estate lease agreement, and I'm sure most of our dentists that have their own practices have done this, if you breach the lease, you have to pay the full amount to the
Buy
end of the
out.
lease. You have
Yeah.
to buy it out, right? And so a lot of vendors agreements have those same termination clauses that, sure, fine, you can end the contract, but you still have to pay us everything. And
Hmm.
then meanwhile, you signed a 3-year deal, and 4 months into this relationship with either this marketing entity or
Yep.
another provider of some sort, that you're not happy with the service, then you're stuck for the next 2.5 years unless you have to sue them to argue that they've breached it in some way, when really they haven't breached it. They're just
You just
not as
didn't like
great
it.
as
Yeah.
you're just not thrilled with
Yeah.
their service.
Yeah, without saying a name of a company, there, we text message and email our clients. That's a really big no-brainer. Have that service in your practice. And for a long time, there was just one company that did it, and it was a 2-year agreement. And no dentist ever checked that. And when they were like, "Well, I don't really want to do it anymore," they're like, "No, you're in it for
That's
2
right.
years." And here's the kicker: on what is it, month 25, day one, it automatically renewed for
Right.
another 2-year agreement.
Oh,
And
unless
this,
you had to
yep,
notify them a certain
yep,
time in
30 days
advance in order to
before.
say,
Yeah.
right.
So then other companies have come along and they're like, no, it's month to month. And so that has forced that company now, they're a 1 year agreement. They've cut it in half, but it's still a year.
Yeah,
Also happens with credit card processing. I see it. The machine that you use, you need to know what
sure.
that is and read the
That's a
fine
great
print.
example.
Yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. You got to be careful because you can't get out of those things very easily
Sure.
typically. And I only, with clients, I only recommend a few companies who don't have that sort of lock in that's going to really punish you.
Sure. And one more thing that I don't even think we spoke about real quick, but make sure, and I'd say this to all business owners, but there's something called the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It's the TCPA, and that was the statute designed to prevent spam phone calls,
Mm,
and that has now been extended to text messages in a lot of ways. And so if you're a business entity that has that uses a marketing company that sends mass texts out,
hmm.
make sure that when your patients sign up, or anyone signs up, first of all, I don't counsel to send any text messages to prospective clients, prospective patients under any circumstances. If you're going to send a text to anybody, make sure it's a phone number that they provided you. They gave this to you
Yeah.
for
You're not
business
soliciting.
purposes.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that we're talking about, business litigation avoidance. That one is huge because the statute provides $500 per uh, erroneous text. So if you
Wow.
hire, yes, and so if you hire a marketing company that sent this out to however many people, they have standing to sue for what's called a class action lawsuit, where where they're one person suing you on behalf of a whole bunch of other people that they're going to then discover during the lawsuit to find out everyone else you sent that text message to. And
Wow.
this is pretty scary stuff. I don't mean to sound the alarm bells, but you'll read, if you Google it in 30 seconds, if you Google TCPA class action, you'll see millions of hits on it. And some really close friends of mine are plaintiffs attorneys, and they've gotten millions of dollars in verdicts against small and large companies on this.
Wow.
And it's something that a lot of your general liability insurance companies have carve outs for it. So
They don't
have
have to pay.
exclusions in their
Yeah.
policies, so you're going to get tagged for it. So the
Yeah.
insurance company is not even going to pay for them on most general liability
Yeah.
defense policies for business owners.
Makes sense. And then lastly, just some peace of mind with employees. Anything that we can do to make sure that I know you mentioned employee agreements, things like that. Any specifics that you would suggest? I'm thinking mostly in terms of like wrongful dismissals, but anything else?
Sure. I would go back and make sure that I would use a contract for all your employment needs, because dental practices usually have they're a tight knit uh, office. It's a tight knit feel to the industry, and so there's no harm in using employment agreements for all your employees. And I would make sure that those agreements have the correct termination clauses that protect you as an employer, and contain the main thing is to have a non-compete agreement that complies with your state statute of what is presumed to be reasonable. And that is, just give you an example, it could be up to a year, and have a reasonable geographic radius that they're not allowed to go and contact your patients, and then use that as a springboard to start their own company down the street. Uh,
Now I
that
see
that
that. I see that. Excuse me. I see that for a dentist to associate, right? I get that. Could that also be used for like another type of employee, like a hygienist, or no?
um, it's so. And I'll speak specifically to Florida law, because there's no
Mm,
federal there's no
hmm.
one law that would apply federally to everybody, but most states have it's almost like a sliding scale. The higher up on the ladder you are, the more um, the state will allow a restriction on it. So, for example, you'd have an easier time as a business owner stopping one of your dentist associates from starting a business down the street than you would for one of your hygienists to leave you and then go work down the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah. It doesn't make too much
Because
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's an emphasis on, and we love our hygienists. I'm
Yeah.
not, nothing disparaging, but the training and the amount of time and money that you've invested in this dentist is more than it is in a hygienist,
An
and the
employee.
court and the law
Gotcha.
takes that into account when it evaluates your question.
Good to know. And then I've seen with clients where there's been litigation due to I didn't provide them, I'm the owner, I didn't provide them with a lunch, not a lunch break, but a break, like a morning break, an afternoon break. And honestly, in dentistry, it's pretty hard to get a break. I mean,
Sure.
even for a hygienist, you're scheduling patients every hour on the hour. You don't really get a break per se. So
Sure.
how do dentists prevent that from happening? What are some things they can do to have peace of mind knowing they're not going to have a disgruntled employee come back at them after dismissal?
I would say to treat your employees like grown-ups, and that they can use your discretion. If you're able to schedule a brief break in between patients at a certain time of day, that I would make that consistent, so that this way your office can plan around it, right? So this way, if you pick the time, from 12:15 to 12:45, either have less patients, so that you only need one hygienist. I don't know, if you're an office that has two hygienists, then stagger your appointments so you only need one in the middle of the day, so that hygienist can take a break during this time, and then when you have another patient come in, it's time for that other hygienist to come back on the clock and service the new patient while the other one takes a break. So I would say staggering of appointments is I mean, that's a science that you could probably teach me about a lot more than I could teach you. But I think that for just staggering breaks, and to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to rest their feet for a minute and get a quick bite to eat, I think staggering appointments in the middle of the day is certainly one option. And the other is just, like I said, just I always err on the side of treating everyone like grown-ups, and empower your employees to have even a slight bit of autonomy. They really do appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Love it. And I mean, I obviously, with the COVID, with the election, with changing the guard, what's to come? I'm not asking you to predict the stock market here or anything, David,
Sure.
but
Oh, I
what are
wish.
some what are some issues you see coming up just down the road? What should we be aware of? What can we, again, more peace of mind that we're planning ahead?
Sure. So, it's funny, if we recorded this, 2 months ago, I think my answer would be significantly different. And that is not, and it's not for the reason you think. It's not the outcome of the election,
Oh, okay.
and it's the outcome of a case that's currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court, and that is the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. Um, Before a recent hearing, they recently had oral arguments on it, and essentially the argument is that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional because it mandates a human being to buy something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That the government cannot force the citizenry to buy a product.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so that's the basis for the to invalidate the Affordable Care Act. Now, the heading into the oral argument, it was largely perceived that with the addition of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, and now there's something of a 6-3 split on the court, and erring on the side of the sort of conservative legal thought, that would be in danger, and that they might actually declare it unconstitutional, and that would send the entire healthcare industry into a level of uncertainty until either a new comprehensive bill is passed, or it would just return, everything to free market, and we'll be right back where we were in 2010, 2011. But at a recent hearing, both Justice John Roberts and new Justice Brett Kavanaugh were very dismissive of the idea that if they do declare that one item, what's called the individual mandate, unconstitutional, do they have to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Does that cancel everything?
Yeah.
And the legal term is excising. Can they excise that out of it? And as a result of the recent oral argument, legal scholars are confident that even if they do reiterate the individual, if they do find the individual mandate unconstitutional, that the entire comprehensive framework for healthcare in this country would at least remain intact for the time being. So I think that's something that until just a few weeks ago, it was a big issue in the election, and it's certainly a big part of the American psyche right now. But I think that the result of that hearing led legal scholars to believe that even if they do decide that the individual mandate is unconstitutional, that the remaining aspects of the ACA will remain intact. So I think that will give the healthcare industry as a whole some level of clarity, and to the effect that extends to dentists, that pertains to the entirety of the healthcare community and platform of this entire country. And so, I think that, I, without giving how I feel about it one way or the other, I just think that it's at least helpful to know that it's most likely that there will not be some giant upheaval in the healthcare industry in 2021, other than the calamities we're currently dealing with.
With COVID, yeah. So, have you heard anything about this affecting people's ability? I should say people affect like corporations or businesses providing benefits or healthcare coverage for their employees. Like I've heard numbers from out there, and I'm like, that is a huge number of people, quote, losing their benefits. Have you heard anything like that? Is this intertwined? Or
I think I believe that has been used as a political football on both sides, and I'll explain that. What that is referring to is if the ACA were in fact invalidated in total.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is required by the ACA is to cover pre-existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear that, that means it would give insurance carriers the right not to issue policies to something close to, we've heard anywhere from 20 million to 100 million people.
Yeah, I heard 60 million. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You for every 60 million you've heard, I've heard 100, someone else has heard 20, someone else, it depends where you read. But I think that issue is a political football used to identify the quantity of people with pre-existing conditions that if the ACA were thrown out,
they would lose their
insurance carriers, right? Who would automatically lose their insurance, which is kind of the way that one side of the political aisle has tried to spin it. But then conversely, that it would give the right for insurance carriers to not renew or to cancel policies. And frankly, we just don't know. Yeah. It's just, if that were invalidated, it's a huge question mark of what would actually happen. And I think that regardless of what happens, if it's affirmed, if the entirety of the statutory framework is affirmed, for better or worse, it'll at least provide clarity. And
where we're
there's some value in that for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's, for dentists, they're probably hearing this going, well, that's more medical based. That's more medical insurance focused, not really dental insurance focused. But I will say this, people's perception, the general public's perception is that if I don't have insurance, I can't go to the dentist.
Right.
And what you need to be prepared for, and as a business owner, is to remove that friction, be flexible, allow people to come see you. So have a in-office membership plan, something that shows them that you're willing to do everything you can to assist them to get in to receive care. And so I think no matter how this turns out with the Affordable Care Act or corporations, cutting back or whatever it is, we've got to be prepared to anticipate a worst case scenario. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And just to put a quick bow on it, it affects the dentistry both in the macro and the micro sense. It affects in the macro sense that how the entire country deals with healthcare will have a direct and an indirect on how it deals with dentistry from an insurance perspective, and just what research and development is invested in, because it'll affect how various funds are allocated. But then even more importantly, on the micro aspects of it, if you're a business owner or if you're an associate dentist at another practice, those issues affect you for your own lives and in your own business. So I think, it's very important for dentists to follow that issue
It's
as
true.
business owners and as consumers of healthcare.
Insurance. Yeah. I mean, you have employees that you're trying to say, hey, go get Affordable Care Act and I'll pay you
Right.
$100 a month. Well, if that's not there anymore, if it changes, you got to be aware of that too. I get your point. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
I get you. All right. So I'm sure there's some questions I've missed, David. So how do people reach out to you that are
sure.
listening that say, Eric, you forgot to ask this?
Absolutely. Anyone, any of your listeners or anyone can feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything we've discussed or anything else. I'm the type of person that I can be a referral source to you. That I'm happy to help you with your practice. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Hell, if I'm not even the person to help you, I'm happy to set you up with someone who is.
Hmm.
So you can contact me. My website is Ehrlich Law LLC. That's EHRLICHLAWLLC.com. So EhrlichLawLLC.com. Also, I'll give you my email address is David at EhrlichLawLLC.com, EHRLICH LawLLC.com. I spell my name every time because it's kind of difficult, and so I can't tell you how many times I've had to change my my email because putting Ehrlich twice in my email throughout my firm practice has been a nightmare. And then also my phone number is 954-507-4477. Again, 954-507-4477. So if anyone has any questions or they just want to bounce an idea off somebody, I'm happy to be a resource in that regard. And this has been a tremendous experience, and I'm really glad to be involved with this. And I thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. No, I think this has been a real treat. I know that this is on the minds of business owners, dentists out there. It's just not on the front all the time. It's like it jumps in front, they have a question, then they repress it and go, no, I need to go do a crown. And so
Right.
there's these thoughts that they have, and I'm sure I didn't cover all of it, but this gave us just dipped our toes in, and you provided some great helpful information. So I'm real appreciative. For those listening, if you have questions for me, it's Eric at allstardentalacademy.com, ERIC at allstardentalacademy.com. Of course, we're here to help you with anything you're dealing with. And if we don't know how to deal with it, we'll refer you to people like David. And so you can also get a coach, have someone to help you be a business owner. You can email Heather at allstardentalacademy.com. She can talk to you and just tell you what she thinks is the best options for you. She's amazing. She's so nice. And I know that for those of you that are listening, she would love it if you would share this podcast with your friends who need to hear this information that David shared with us today. So subscribe to the podcast, share it, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast, share it with your colleagues. This is just great free advice that people need to hear. And just being business owners, you got to hear this stuff. You got to be aware. So thank you so much again, David, for donating your time to us today and just being so willing to share. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a fantastic experience.
And for those that are listening, thank you for joining us and taking the time to invest in yourself. And until next time, go out there and be an all-star.